I swear, every time I go into something expecting it to just be funny antics, I end up being gut-punched with emotions that send me reeling. The constant reminder that life is finite and dwindling, and all we really have is each other echoing throughout my head. This particular spiraling flux of feels, and many more like it, brought to you by the most fucked up shit you've ever seen. Problematic media. You've probably heard the term if you're as clinically addicted to the burning hellscape of Twitter as I, and it's a phrase that's penetrating the proverbial town square of the internet harder and harder until we all end up with a little on our faces. Hardly a week goes by where at least one person isn't starting a tizzy about lolicon shipping or some other forbidden taboo popularized in media from that darling little island of debauchery in the East. Here's the thing though, no matter how many thousands of likes disparaging lolicon or its ilk gets, I don't think any media made for the purpose of entertainment or expression of the artist is problematic. As a matter of fact, it's the exact opposite. Rewind back to the clip I opened this video with, and minor spoilers. That's a scene from Kodomo no Jinkan, a show that from one cursory Google search is largely only known as problematic lollibait, and one of the pioneers of the genre at that. However, as you might be piecing together based on the aforementioned scene, the show's not all panty shots and finger fellatio. Episodes 1 through 5, what I'd argue most reviewers actually watched, are a lot of that. But within even episode 1, during the first one-on-one encounter between Aoki-sensei, a fresh-out-of-college teacher, and the main character of the show, fuck you Annie lest I'm right, and his student, Kokonoe Rin, the series flat-out asks of both Aoki and its audience, why is Kokonoe acting the way she does? It'd be expected that because Aoki's the point of view, we'd get to find out through what he learns. But Aoki really never does figure out the truth for himself. It's not his place to know the interpersonal affairs of his students after all. What he, as a teacher, can do is provide support for them as they go through a time of change in their lives, which is what Kodomo no Jikan is really about. It focuses on what it's like to grow up as Kokonoe Rin does, as someone with only one parental figure who's not as present as much as a kid that age needs. And not to mention, someone Kokonoe, an 11-year-old, needs to console at times. Her attention-seeking through putting her teacher into sexual situations stems from both that isolation at home and reaching an age where questions of the promiscuous variety naturally start popping up. It's in that foundation that Kodomo no Jikan builds its house. And it's a rather good one, I think. The original manga was written by Kaoru Watashiya, a now 49, Jesus Christ, she's the same age as my dad, year-old woman who, as with any good work of art, was drawing from her own life experiences. Kodomo no Jikan is not subtle with the story it's trying to tell. As far as anime, and I assume manga goes, it's not anything particularly groundbreaking. However, it uses what it has incredibly well. It's fun to see Aoki, as he learns more about Kokonoe, figure out the right steps to take, both as a new teacher and as a kissless version, shows words not mine, who lets himself get caught up on anything even slightly sexual because he doesn't know how to deal with it. It crafts a fine dynamic between its characters through its usage of problematic subject matter. From the last 442 words, a question then arises. That's nice and all, but why? Why write something with so much borderline softcore? Couldn't you tell the story without all that and it'd be just as good, if not better? No. It's a simple answer, but the answer's no. It wouldn't be the same story because Jikan uses its more sultry elements as a plot drive. Take episode 10, for example. With the cursory knowledge I've given you about the series, Kokonoe acting out in sexual ways and the like, Aoki-sensei starts to have serious questions about her home life and what could be inspiring Kokonoe's actions. He thinks her surrogate father might be taking advantage of her or in the worst case, sexually abusing her. And though that's not the case, it is a reasonable belief for Aoki to have. At the same time these doubts are brewing, Aoki is also spending more time with one of the other female teachers at the school, Hoen-sensei. A development Kokonoe fears because in her mind, Hoen is someone who's on the other side of where she's trying to be, an adult woman getting in a relationship with Aoki. She thinks she won't be able to get his attention and spend time with him if he has a girlfriend, so she messages him, telling Aoki that her father figure is about to do something to her, making Aoki understandably lose his head. This is episode 10 of a 12-episode series. There's been a lot of build-up and red flags going off in Aoki's mind with regards to Kokonoe, so when he shows up and nothing is actually happening and she asks him to open up a pickle jar, it's both stunning for the audience and Aoki. He's genuinely terrified that she'd do something like that just for attention. Kokonoe, meanwhile, is sobbing because she recognizes that, though she did something horrendous, her fear of being abandoned by the one person who gives her the time of day was proven wrong. Her doubts evaporate and she's left a teary mess, only now realizing the ramifications of her actions. Stuff is pretty compelling. It's legitimately because of a buildup of teasing, panty shots, and a kiss that the story can pick up pace in a natural way and subvert viewer expectations of it just being a trashy show, getting the heavy plot beats by episode 6 and climaxing on it all by episode 10. You know, instead of meandering for 100 or so chapters before losing the point. Kodomo no Jikan revolves around growing up as a girl of that age, and as stated, the sex stuff is just a part of that. To cut it out would not only feel unnatural, it'd actively make the story worse. However, even a show that's unlike Kodomo no Jikan in that it is actually just trashy lolly fan service, still has the right to exist. Now comes the part where I imagine a few of you are going to fly off the rails because no matter how much sound there is in the logic of what I'm about to say, some people refuse to hear it and will scream slurs and accusations until their lungs fucking explode. That said, before we do get there, I would beseech those of you who clicked out of anger to please watch the entire video before leaving a comment. Haruhi knows I've given the benefit of the doubt and listened to the other side of this way more than I probably should. So I'll be hoping for a few of you to at least do the same. Though, that hope's probably not going to amount to much, is it me? A piece of art like that deserves to exist and can toy around with all the messed up stuff it wants, because it's not real. It's a cartoon. A medium, like video games and artworks, center around elements that, surprise surprise, wouldn't exactly fly in the real world. Well, I say it wouldn't fly, but we all know what utterly fucked things go down in Hollywood, USA, where child actors routinely have their lives destroyed from either overwork or exploitation in all senses of the word, in an industry with sexual assault and grooming accusations flooding out like the Nile during a ket. Meanwhile, all these lollybait anime only have adults working on the staff, are written by a grown woman or man, or voiced by an all-of-age cast, and despite its subject matter, has not once put a child in danger. Fiction can interact with our brains and make us feel things, but it's never one-to-one with the actions we take in our day-to-day lives. To call back briefly, someone can relate to Kokonoe's fears of abandonment and still have the mental fortitude to not condone her actions. We've already had this conversation back in the 90s with violence in video games. Just because someone plays Doom or, dare I say, GTA, doesn't mean they're gonna pick up a gun and go shoot people. Video games, particularly the violent kind, work as a stress reliever. Many of you likely have first-hand experience with that if you've played any after a long day. Someone who really enjoys them isn't a danger to society. Likewise, just because someone's super into something like Yosugu no Sora doesn't mean they're gonna go off and court their little sister. Surprisingly, most humans have this innate thing in our brains that, turn us off to the idea of incest. It isn't exactly advantageous to our prolonged existence and all that. However, a show which centers around such a taboo thing is undeniably intriguing at its premise. So people watch it, with the realization in the back of their mind that none of this is real. Why sexual lollies in an incestuous relationship? Why not? Like true crime shows, it's the whole taboo which is the draw in the first place. These lines on a screen that we in the anime sphere have colloquially referred to as a lolly for decades now represent a lot of things. Innocence, cuteness, and childishness. All traits that can apply to literally anyone regardless of age, but are usually a package deal with regards to lollies. Someone can identify with those traits and want to see them explored in a sexual sense because an average, non-psychotic brain recognizes that those lines on a screen do not make up anything remotely fleshy or human-like. That's why you get characters like Oshino Shinobu in the Monogatari series, a 500-year-old vampiric lolly whose main purpose in an artistic sense is to just mess with conventions. She can simultaneously be serious and wise well beyond her appearance would have you believe, while still falling back on cuteness and it not feel like shit writing, both because of design and because the idea of the paleo lolly is a pretty out there concept. She's distinctly not human, yet has traits that viewers can appreciate. Shinobu is intriguing because of that though. Because of how divorced she is from the norm, the audience wants to find out more about her, either because they find the dichotomy of her personality fascinating, or because they think she's cute. It's also a valid reason. In regards to plain, non-500-plus-year-old lollies though, it's still an interesting idea to play around with and put your feet into the shoes of. To put it into perspective, and a brief content warning, say there's someone who experienced sexual trauma at a young age. They block out the memory because that's how the mind copes sometimes, and years later find themselves into sexual depictions of lollies because it really strikes a chord with them. It's their favorite thing to search up when the time arises, as seeing those traits they can identify with having a positive sexual experience helps them through their own demons. As explained earlier, the effect art has on the mind is different from the one reality has. If you've ever wondered why someone can be super into femboys in the anime sense but gag at the sight of a real dick, there you go. Back to the example. This person, right? They're not harming anyone, they're not causing any inverse effect on the world. They're just enjoying some art because it gives them emotional catharsis. Years later, this person has an emotional breakdown reading the Kohaku route in Tsukihime and remembering that sexual trauma which led them to take an interest in lolly art in the first place. Months later from that, they started writing a video called Why Problematic Media is Good Actually. I know personal anecdotes are not the best argument, and by all means I admit that, but my god, you would not believe the amount of people who share a similar story in regards to all this. I'm not going to name any names, as I know there will likely be a disgusting subset of people who find this video, but needless to say, it's a lot. Lolly art is a legitimate coping mechanism some people use to get over this trauma. Psychologists have no issue with it, and there is not a single reputable resource outside of the personal antidote, but it makes me feel weird, which, okay? You don't have to like something. That's the beautiful thing about art after all. Don't like it, move on to the next thing you do. I personally rather dislike Fate Apocrypha, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and Wuthering with You, but I'd never think someone's a Nazi sympathizer because they were really into Apocrypha. I'd never think someone supports war crimes because they adored Father and Brotherhood. And though I'd consider their taste quite shit on a personal level, I'd never actively disparage someone for putting the most beautiful 2 out of 10 I've ever seen Wuthering with You in their 3x3. Media sparks a conversation. A lot of things can be media, anime, manga, gaming, etc. But one thing they all share is that some kind of talking point can be spawned from them. For instance, someone who watches Orihimo might then say to themselves, well, that was dog shit, but what if I were the MC? And from there, a conversation between the viewer and the work springs up. A conversation that has its fingers in the taboo pie, as well as the veil separating reality from not reality. It's that very reason why incest is one of the most popular tags on both most hentai sites and actual porn websites. It's something you'd obviously never do, in most cases, but it's as interesting as and because of how generally messed up it is. As bad as I personally think the second season of the show might be, Orihimo does offer insight into what might go on into the minds of 2 siblings who are in that kind of relationship. And, like with Kodomo no Jikan before it, the situations it puts its characters in are, at the very least, interesting to watch. Murder is a taboo thing to do as well, but when hearing about a serial killer, most people have the inclination to find out more. Likewise, if you hear that someone is actually banging their sister, your first inclination might be disgust. But it's a downright lie if you say you don't want to learn more. What events led to it? Why would someone partake in that forbidden fruit? It's that very curiosity that something like Tsukihime embodies and puts at the core of the Akiya route. Oreimo does the same, but it falls on its face very hard and is bad, so Akiya time. Tsukihime is an eroge visual novel, and this route, no spoilers, no worries, has the incestuous relationship of Shiki, the main character, and Akiya at its forefront. Something which, as it progresses, Shiki constantly thinks about the ramifications of. He stops himself from looking at her in that way, before saying to hell with it and going all the way with her, as any eroge worth its salt should do. There's also Shiki's drive to murder that he's constantly fighting, but for the sake of keeping things simple, incest. Seeing Tsukihime break down the barriers of normalcy slowly over the course of this route is honestly what makes it so memorable, both to the benefit and detriment of some readers. I liked it. Others, who aren't into reading about the psychology of someone who literally comes from generations of inbreeding and is about to follow suit, don't. But there's no big infighting about this, and it's one of those situations where you either like it or you don't. Isn't that neat, how within a fandom different people can like different things and be civil about it? Wild. Fictional characters don't have to adhere to what's generally accepted. They can go off and do any amount of messed up things they want, and that's okay. As long as they're compelling, that should be all that matters. That being said, it is taking some of our human-like traits and injecting them into these characters which makes them compelling in the first place. If our main boy Tono is going around raping and killing on a whim and without self-conflict, sure, you can make that interesting for a bit, but you lose the gravitas that it otherwise does have. Not to say something like that can't be done correctly. If anything, one of the most well-known eroge of all time, Euphoria, is proof of that, with it delving into the psyche of someone who's fucked in the head enough to enjoy inflicting acts of the not very cool variety onto the rest of the cast. Which would make them deplorable by our own world's logic, yet Keisuke, the MC of Euphoria, is one of the best written protags in the genre. These characters like Shiki and Keisuke can do this because they aren't alive, they don't think like you or I, nor do they actively impact the world. They simply are a medium for which the audience can draw from and think about on their own. Now, there certainly is a level of attachment to a fictional character or work where it does start to get a little concerning, tulpas and the like, but someone jacking it to lollies making out when they get home from work is 1, perfectly legal in the good old US of A, we don't get much right, but we got this one, okay? And 2, no cause for concern from anyone. Again, there is not a single study that refutes this, yet just like a screaming horde of anti-vaxxers, you just can't convince some who have been brainwashed into that way of thinking. Which leads me into something I've wanted to get off my chest for a while. The anti-lolicon, anti-shipping, anti-taboo, or anything fun in my fucking Japanese anime brigade are a cult. They have shady recruitment tactics and weaponizing actual children via demonizing anyone who is not a part of their clique. 99% of the time, the people inciting mobs on Twitter have something to hide, and just look at the behavior scrolling on screen right now. This stuff isn't okay. There are countless stories of targeted harassment campaigns against people who were just enjoying some pixels on a screen. No signs of any pedophilic tendencies, yet because they happened to like this particular body style in their art, they were harassed incessantly with false accusations and death threats, reported and in some cases fucking doxxed. This is not okay behavior for anyone to partake in. I don't care what the other person has done. If you feel like a crime is being committed, don't play Batman, fucking report it. This mentality of taking down the lolicons is deranged and unhealthy. To be fair, are there people who like lolly art who are actually pedophiles who need to seek mental help immediately? Let me answer that with a few questions so no one takes this out of context. Are there people in the Smash community who tell 14-year-olds to call them daddy? Are there people who like inciting mobs who have demons they'd rather keep hidden? The answer to all of these is yes, because guess what? Every community of people has its share of filth. No one is clean, and you can find a runt in every litter. I get it. It's easy to demonize lolly art because of what it looks like, just like it's easy to demonize incestuous art and ships because it isn't moral. Just like it's easy to demonize violence in art because violence is an inherent evil. Oh wait, the majority of people like violent video games, they'll never be taken away. That is a flat out wrong mentality. If you think any censorship mob will stop at shutting up those who are into NTR, Guro, incest, shipping, or lollies, that is just false. Tumblr was once a site where a whole smorgasbord of things were allowed to be up. Now, however, since the ban of NSFW art, the site has gotten less and less traffic and is only becoming far more insular. This isn't to bash anyone on Tumblr, I'm sure there are still good communities on there and all the power to them, but censorship of this kind and on this scale is not sustainable. If more and more passions are stifled, eventually there'll be nothing of merit left but a society of people who feel completely and utterly repressed with no outlet. In an increasingly depressing world, people need that outlet, be it making art themselves or just enjoying it. Without an outlet, that energy doesn't fade, it just goes to places where it's wasted as otherwise productive-minded people hate themselves more and more. I know it's a tired statistic, but Japan is one of the lowest for sexual assault and other crimes of that variety, which I'd posit is because they have a culture that isn't suppressive, and allows for their artists to make things like a super busty 14-year-old named Yoko Littner in one of the best anime of all time, Gurren Lagann, which, like with Kodomo no Jikon's finger filleting, is an important part of the plot. Also, have I mentioned that ages in anime are pretty arbitrary and given out randomly? Ilya is 18, Yoko is 14, and Naoi is 1,000. None of this has concrete logic because it doesn't have to, and to try and make it all fit within our own real-world structure is both pointless and insane behavior to partake in. Long story short though, if you or anyone you know have weaponed up and attacked anyone who did nothing but draw/enjoy art, then yeah, you should feel shame over those actions. No one deserves to receive death threats for drawing what they enjoy drawing, and nor should the audience who enjoy that work, which doesn't harm anyone and literally only has a net positive on the world, receive the same. However, I don't think anyone should attack you for your actions unless they were particularly horrendous. It might be cliché to say, but I hope if someone like that has made it this far into the video that they learn from their actions and become a better person. Also, thank you for sticking around as long as you have. I know I've said some very choice words, and trust me, there's gonna be a few more before this is all over. It's fucked that I even have to explain why sending death threats over a problematic ship or any kind of art is a bad thing, as you'd think a community like one centered around anime of all things, a medium which has had and will continue to have taboos proliferating it, would get it. Would get why people are into said taboos and that it's all just lines on a paper that make us feel funny things. Well, anyone except, deranged folks and kids just getting into it. Hey, can you guess what we're talking about now? It's how all of these people, 1, have something to hide and are projecting, 2, are actually psychotic enough to think that fictional characters have rights and resemble anything a real flesh human does, or 3, are children who don't know any better and have been rallied by the former with the false cause that they're taking down the scum of the earth. This rising tide of what are known as antis within circles who are just trying to enjoy what they like without being told to go off themselves are a real problem. It's why I started writing the script in the first place. As I stated at the beginning, you can't go a week on the hellhole of Twitter without running into these people stating how they want anime to change or how all of Japan is made up of pedophiles. Something, as I think I've made plenty clear at this point, is just plain not true. I'm somewhat of an adult, so I can rationally think about these things and come to a sound conclusion. The best thing about art of any variety is that, in reality, there's only one person the art is ever really made for, and that's the artist. There's external factors, of course. For example, I myself am putting my thoughts into a coherent structure right now because I want others to interact with it, but I'm not compromising on the message. That's what antis want. For artists to compromise on their message until there is no message. Everything I've brought up in this video thus far, Euphoria, Tsukihime, Kodomo no Jinkan, etc., all of it couldn't exist without the problematic things at their core, things that make the work what they are. If you think I'm making a mountain out of a molehill despite these people telling me and many, many others to go die over things like a damned Nezuko Ono hole and a pension for free thought, then you're wrong. These accusations can ruin someone's online personality permanently for no good reason, as apparently calling someone a pedo is just something antis do. Throwing out what is the most damning accusation you can give like they're a broken piñata filled with projection and malintent until there's no more meaning to the words they say. Outside of the personal scape, the effects of this incessant whining are already being felt within the anime community at large as well. No Game No Life is a light novel series by Yu Kamiya, which was later adapted into an amazing anime adaptation by Studio Madhouse back in 2014. This series, it's pretty good. Watching it for the first time a few days ago in preparation for this video, I remembered why isekai was actually fun. Big ol' smiley face rating. However, if you go to look for the source material for this show, you won't find it on Amazon as it's been blacklisted. Now, there is no official statement on why, but reading the line, because of complaints from fans, as well as its ban in Australia, has me thinking that it's all because it depicts one of the lead characters, a lolly named Shiro, in a somewhat provocative way. Again, this is a drawing we're talking about, and Amazon is a site that sells sex toys without blurring anything. Something that's way more concerning for any child randomly scrolling through Amazon to see than some Shimapan will ever be. None of these covers are even that bad, honestly. And the content, at least within the anime, is also nothing to get into a fuss over. I was baffled when I watched the show because I figured the hate would at least be founded, but nothing here even comes close to the first 5 minutes of something like Manga Sensei, and I can't imagine the LN goes any further than the Monogatari light novels do. Both still up on Amazon, by the way. The two siblings share a close bond and are shown at times to have maybe incestuous feelings, but nothing really is up front. My point is, though, even if it was and is in the LN, why would anyone care? You can still buy It by Stephen King readily almost anywhere, and that has characters of the same age range as Shiro having a damn orgy in the middle. It's a double standard to say that one has deep meaning and that the other should be demonized if they are, at their core, similar in function. And I'm not saying that there aren't shows or the like that have fanservice-y things without meaning. For something like that, you need look no further than Nisei Monogatari, a season of the Monogatari series which I think had a plot, but I really only remember because the fanservice was off the charts. It's really well done, and no matter how much people analyze every frame for some deep meaning, to me, this is clearly just done to titillate the audience and because the author, Nisio Isin, thought it would be fun to write. As a writer who's written similar stuff in my free time, I am inclined to agree. This stuff is great because it looks good. It is the literal definition of style over substance. Why not just have some dumb fun in your work, though? It suits where the story is at, and the amount of doujins based on this part of the Monogatari series is legendary. Also not a good twister. Anime is a genre. Scratch that, anime has a lot of genres. Anime is a Japanese colloquialism which comes from shortening the word animation. And animation is a medium of art which should stay as weird as it is. And I say get weirder because that only allows for more creative freedom and ways for people to express, and people like me to analyze that express.
That's pretty good, right?
There's always going to be the next big shonen or Ghibli movie to sink your teeth into, my dear normies who've made it this far in. Props to you, by the way. But my god, shut up about making anime more homogenous to your own culture. Your own culture is fucking boring. That was the initial draw of anime in the first place, was it not? That it was exciting and new. In this medium, there's something for everyone, and I think that's cool. You know what else is cool, though? Not harassing anyone for what they fucking like. I wish no ill intent on anyone unless they've sent out death threats or slanderous accusations. And honestly, the extent of that ill intent is that they have a deep, contemplative think about their reckless actions and come back a decent, functioning human being with the mental fortitude to realize that if they don't like something, they can change the channel or keep scrolling to something they do. To all the aunties out there who are watching this, I sincerely hope you get better, but also, fuck you. To all the lolicons watching this, yo, what's up? To all the pro-shipping people out there, I don't even get why people are angry at you, honestly. Like, what, you ship the students with the teacher in Fire Emblem Three Houses when the game already does that? Ooh, scary. Keep on keeping on, you winners. Own that siscon pride and problematic age gap. Also, let me add, just in case the K-On! AVIs find this, trans rights or human rights, I can commonly be found cross-dressing as Satsuki Yumizuka, and I sincerely hope you get better soon, but like, fuck you. Anywho, I'm getting pretty tired. I think there's this Kara no Kyokai retrospective I was supposed to be doing before I got sidetracked. So if that sounds remotely interesting to you or you like my style, subscribe and like the video. Also, if you want to hear me rant about the topics brought up in this video at length, I have a Patreon podcast which will be dropping in a day or two after this video goes up, so keep an eye out for that. All that said, tell me what you thought about the video, and I will see you all soon. Sleepy out.